Good afternoon. Rich Nass, Executive Vice President with Open Systems Media, here for our weekly chat with Ray Zinn. Hello, Ray. How are you?
Very good, Rich. Thanks. Appreciate that comment.
As you know, Ray is the former CEO of Micrel. He's the author of a book called Tough Things First. He's also, I don't know if you're an author of a podcast, but he's the creator of a podcast that has that same name, Tough Things First, where he tackles some pretty interesting subjects. So what I'd like to talk to you about today, Ray, is something that is probably right up your alley as a business person. The fact that the valuations of hardware companies don't seem to be in line with software companies. Now, in my opinion, I guess it's my opinion, if you have something tangible to sell, like hardware, your company should be worth more than somebody who is selling software, say an operating system like a version of Linux, even Microsoft, for example. So if you contrast that with the valuation of semiconductor companies, why is it that the software companies are valued higher? And is that something that we should be concerned about? Is there a potential bubble out there that might burst?
Well, that's a complex subject, and I don't know that we can just have a single phrase that would cover all situations. So let me start out by saying that anytime a product is commoditized, when it becomes fungible, there is that risk for standardization. And when you standardize something, then you invite a lot of other folks to come in and replicate that product. If you recall, Intel, in order to preserve their margins, actually required companies that bought their computer chip to put that Intel inside, that little jingle that they had, and you had to include that on the cover of your packaging, because they're trying to somehow or another differentiate themselves in some way from people like AMD or others that make comparable chips. But that didn't last long, with all these RISC processors, ARM, and others that came out with devices that are faster and can do the same job. It lost its value, at least to the hardware manufacturers. So again, it doesn't really, say that there's something unique about the software companies over the hardware companies. It really revolves around the commoditization or the fungibility of the product that you're actually manufacturing. There are a lot of hardware companies that don't produce commoditized hardware that still have good margins. So when you look at what we call good margins, anything above 50% is considered to be acceptable. It's when the margins drop below 50% is where you have difficulties.
So let's talk about what the value of Micrel was, if you don't mind me doing that. It was obviously something that was of great concern, but what were the things you would do to keep that up? Was it beyond just being profitable and having leading-edge products? I mean, would I even dare say that it might have been artificially driven?
Well, it's two things. It's margins and growth, or the bottom line, which is margin. And so, back in the dot-com era, we were growing at compounded over 60% per year. Then after the dot-com implosion, our revenue dropped significantly, as well as the rest of our industry, and the valuations dropped. One time Micrel was worth over $7 billion market cap, but that shrunk as the growth and the margins dropped. So to keep your margin or to keep your market cap up, you need to have growth at least 2x that of the GDP. So you need to have growth annually and on the 4 to 5% range, even in this poor economic situation, if you're going to garner a higher market cap, or revenue to market cap. Does that help?
Yes, it definitely helps. But educate me a little bit. Okay, so if you're the CEO, you're generally not selling your shares. Why is it so important to have that number to be as high as possible?
Well, if you don't, then you invite in the activists, and then they think that they can come in and by waving a magic wand, they somehow or another can get the market cap up. So that's one of the problems. You've seen that with Yahoo and Darden and others, even Micrel, where the activists came in and said, hey, there's something broken. There was nothing really broken. It's just an artifact of certain economic issues.
Okay, so now one of my original questions was: is there a bubble out there on the software side, or is that not something people should be concerned about at this point?
Well, as you know, there's a number of different software companies, and depending upon where they're headed and how they're perceived by the market, they could be vulnerable to degradation in their valuation if they see their revenues fall, or at least their growth fall off. Such as Twitter and even LinkedIn have seen their valuations drop. So yes, everyone is vulnerable if your growth seems to have moderated.
But then you look like at an Amazon, and they're like $1,000 now. I mean, is that sustainable?
Well, again, it depends upon how sustainable you think their growth is. I don't know how many different ways they can put together their marketing strategy. So at some point, like all things, they come to an end. And growth is what it's all about. I don't think Amazon has very good margins, but certainly they have growth, and they've relied on that growth to sustain their market cap.
And I think a very good example is Apple. I mean, they were sky high for so long, but they haven't really been having innovative products in quite some time, and their stock price is showing that. Yeah.
They all have a cycle, and so a typical cycle for a product is around 5 years. And so, Apple, at least on their current product line, has reached about its 5-year limit. And unless they can come up with another widget that's going to, pump up their growth again, they're going to suffer the same demise.
Okay. Well, we certainly don't want to say to anybody that this is investment advice, because it's far from it. But
no.
It is very interesting, and it's a topic that needs exploring for sure. We don't want to go through another one of these bubble bursts. Actually, there's been a few of them, but they certainly cause a lot of hardship.
Listen, all companies have gone through it. Look at Atari. Back in their day, they were flying high. They had the first, the video games, and shoot, now, the video game market is commoditized, and there's a number of companies like that, and Apple is kind of like Atari. If you recall, they were the high flyers, back in the 80s.
I do remember that. They were one of my favorite companies back in the 80s. I used to have a lot of their games.
Yeah, well, again, Fairchild is another company that jumped in with their video game, and of course now they're not even a company anymore.
This is true. Okay. Well, I think we'll stop there. That was very interesting, and will certainly cause me to go back and do some more homework. That was my weekly chat with Ray Zinn, the former CEO of Micrel. This is Rich Nass with Open Systems Media. Have a great day, everybody.